Hey there, and welcome to the Agentic Voice Podcast. In today's episode, we are discussing research on the professional voice and the building of a voice institute. My name is Christine Ruiz, and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Geneva Main, and our special guest for today, Christine Murphy Estes. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to our channels on Instagram, YouTube, and your favorite podcast platform. And drop us a note and let us know what you'd love to hear more about at info@theagenticvoice.org. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. Christine Murphy Estes is a speech-language pathologist who specializes in voice and upper airway disorders, including phonotraumatic injury, neurologic voice disorders, chronic cough, and age-related voice change. As a classical singer with a bachelor's degree in voice performance from Crane School of Music and a master's degree in opera performance from McGill University, she has specialized expertise in the care of the professional voice. 1 year ago, Christine joined the Westchester Medical Center in Valhalla, New York, where she is helping build and expand the comprehensive interdisciplinary voice and swallow program alongside laryngologist Dr. David Garber. This followed an 11-year tenure with Weill Cornell Medical College in New York City, where she was a founding member of the Sean Parker Institute for the Voice and helped establish the Institute as a center for quality care and clinical research. She is appointed as an assistant professor at the New York Medical College Institute of Public Health and is actively involved in clinical research, educational conferences, and outreach programs. Christine, we are so looking forward to our chat today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It is such a pleasure to chat with the two of you. I am truly excited to see where our conversation goes today.
Oh my goodness, I've been waiting to do this for so long. I'm so excited. Before we get into the nitty gritty, let's talk about what's new and what's good. And I know you have exciting news. I can't wait to hear it. It's breaking news, everybody. And I usually start, I really don't have anything super exciting going on. It's like my first big major winter in my house, and I'm dealing with like snow removal and non-exciting things, and it's quite the learning curve. But yeah, that's what's been preoccupying my time. But what's going on with you?
I do have breaking news. You're the first to hear. I'm so excited to share this. I'm going to be the chair for the Fall Voice Conference Speech Language Pathology Pre-Conference.
Nice.
And yes, and I'm so excited. We're in the very kind of beginning stages. I have an outstanding co-chair, Daniel Buckley from Boston Medical Center. And the two of us have been tasked with creating a full day program of hopefully awesomeness about voice to share with the SLPs at the Fall Voice Conference in Phoenix this year. I'm so thrilled to do it. I was honored and humbled to be asked, and I'm just, my brain is on overdrive right now, trying to think of themes and guest speakers and things like that.
That is so exciting.
Thank you.
A little bit overwhelming though, like
Are you listeners? I'm vigorously nodding right now. It is overwhelming. It is very overwhelming. With all of the excitement comes oh my gosh, I have to make it amazing.
Right. Because if it flops, it's all on you.
Exactly, right? No pressure at all.
But it's always good. A lot of people say Fall Voice is like their favorite conference.
It's truly one of my favorite conferences. I have gone almost every year since I started my very first position at Weill Cornell Medical College in 2011. I think I've gone every single year almost, and I've spoken, I think, at 9 of the conferences. So this will be the first time being tasked with organization and planning for it.
Right. Yeah. So you'll have a committee, right? Is that usually what they do? You have
It's
a
actually just the two of us. It's just
Woo!
Daniel and I putting the whole thing together. Yes.
Please tell me there's an admin team to help you.
There's definitely an admin team to
Okay.
help. And
Okay.
the chairs of the overall conference are there as resources as well. And the primary person who's been in touch with me is Lauren Timmons Sund, who's at the USC Voice Center. She's one of the chairs of the Fall Voice Conference. So she's already such a great resource to me. So she's there to help if I get in the weeds.
That's so exciting. I'm so happy for you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
congratulations.
Thank you so much.
This is great.
And how about you, Kristen? What's new and what's good?
Oh, I'm kind of flying these days. I'm trying to slow down a little bit. So I started like making my own sourdough bread, which has a lot of steps, but when you do it, it's like a moment to be like in the present, practicing that and making my own vegan cheese and like learning how to, I'm going to try some vegan butter later on. I'm going to make some of my own. So doing some of that stuff. Sorry, if you hear a jingle, it's not little elves. It's a little dog who is shaking here. Anyway. And then I think I'm flying this week because, and I love the fact that I'm talking to two SLPs right now, because you're going to appreciate this as much as I do. I have three particular singers who at one point had some vocal challenges and had been given some very limiting statements about what was going to be possible for them. And one of them just debuted at Lincoln Center. The next one is also going to debut in a couple of weeks there as well. And the other one just got, I'm like throwing up of happiness. She just got an invitation to sit on the Grammy board. So,
oh, wow.
and it's like looking at if they had believed the limiting stories that were dancing all around them, their choices would have been very different, but they chose resourcefulness and resilience, and they did the work. They really shifted they created a new singer's life for themselves. Yeah. And so I'm celebrating because this is all it's all kind of like snowballing right now. So we're kind of in the energy of celebration. So we're excited.
What a message to lead with right away. Because that is truly, in all of the years that I have been working, we just see time after time after time that, voice problems, voice injury, they do not need to limit your potential. They do not need to derail your career. There's so much out there. There's so many resources. There's so much help out there. And, we have to just keep fighting to change that message and kind of reframe how we view and talk about voice problems, voice injury, as instead of being that limiting factor, as being an opportunity.
So we'll move into our next segment, Experience, Strength, and Hope. Before we talk about your work with patients and singers, let's hear more about you.
So after 11 years at the Sean Parker Institute, you then go and open a voice center in Westchester. So can you talk to us a little bit about what made you decide to make this shift, and what need did you see that was going on and how this is filling that?
Yeah, this was not an easy decision to make. Okay, to leave a well-established, well-oiled, incredible machine and say, okay, I'm going to go somewhere small and help build something new. It's scary. It is leaping and seeing what comes of it. And during all of that time at the Parker Institute for the Voice, we would see so many patients coming in from Westchester County, from the neighboring counties, from Dutchess County, where I'm from. And these patients would have to travel a really long distance to get high quality voice care. And I mean, they would take full days off of work. And that's really difficult to do. Yeah. And as someone who is a Hudson Valley girl, I'm from Wappingers Falls originally, and I moved to Westchester County. I kept looking for opportunities to help my community and say, these are my neighbors, these are my kids' school teachers, these are my daughter's, theater directors. How can I help people in the community? So for a while, I was doing that on kind of a semi-private basis, or I was doing some per diem work at a local hospital. I was per diem at Phelps Memorial Hospital for a while. But I really wanted to find something that offered that true interdisciplinary clinic experience, which is really the laryngologist and, voice specialized speech pathologist, or we can kind of colloquially say voice therapist, combined, giving that quality care. And so when I saw that there was an open position at Westchester Medical Center, my interest was immediately piqued. And when I saw that the laryngologist on board, who, would be the partner, was Dr. David Garber, who's, a really talented, thoughtful, intelligent person with fantastic training. I mean, he trained at NYU Voice Center, and then he went on to do his laryngology fellowship in Seattle under Dr. Murati. So he's coming with a pretty fantastic pedigree.
Yeah.
I had to consider it. And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't easy to leave where I was, but it was this very exciting opportunity for growth. And I was craving that growth, and already having the experience of being a founding member of a voice institute, because when I started at Weill Cornell, there was no voice institute. We were the voice weirdos in the Department of ENT. And we later became the Sean Parker Institute for the Voice. So I was a founding member. And so I had already helped build something, and I knew that I was the right person for this job. I just felt it in my bones that I was the right person to do this. So I'm really proud of what we're building. We are the only interdisciplinary voice clinic in the Hudson Valley. And it's a very highly collaborative model of healthcare. So it's exciting to get the word out there. So thank you for helping us get the word out there and talking about us. We're really trying to help our own community.
Nice. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's so many, even high school students who want to get into NYU, do musical theater, I know there's Broadway singers living in Westchester.
Oh,
And
yes.
everybody takes the long trip down to Manhattan, but it's nice that there's care available
Oh, absolutely.
in Westchester. That's awesome.
That's great. Actually, I made my first referral to you guys recently, because I had heard about this voice center that was opening up, but also, the quality matters, and so it was when I heard that you were running it, and I was like, oh, Sean Parker, I had a very positive experience. So my husband in 2017 had voice surgery there, and you guys took very good care of him. His voice is doing amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And so so that was where I was always referring to. But then so I just sent my first singer over your way.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It has been really great, because I'm also getting a lot of referrals from the laryngologists in New York City as well. I'm getting, from all of the people I know, they're getting phone calls. Hey, I've got somebody who lives, in Irvington, or who lives in Rybrook, and and they're coming here. Can we send them to you? And I go, yes. So I am taking referrals from other laryngologists as well. And that's taking a nice portion of my caseload as well. I am very busy, which is a great problem to have. And, kind of on that front, we are finally at a point now that I'm a year in, that we've gotten busy enough where we actually are planning to expand. So
Nice.
keep your eyes and ears open, because there should be a position for a new speech language pathologist
Nice.
made available pretty soon. So I'm excited to soon hopefully have a fantastic colleague as well.
Awesome.
Yes.
So in most voice clinics, it seems there's like a 1 to 2 month waiting list sometimes to get appointments. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are expanding and so quickly.
Yes, I mean, it's certainly the case for us as well, where we've gotten to that point. I have the most incredible coordinator, like Robin. I talk about her, like I just bow down to her. She is the person who, she sees an opening on my schedule, and she's on the phone looking to fill that opening with someone who has a wait time, she's like, we can get that person in sooner. So it's a lot of hustle, and a lot of legwork, but the team is really committed to helping everybody we can as quickly as possible.
And why do you think there's been such a vacancy or a vacuum in Westchester? I mean, it's a pretty congested area. It's not the city, but high population.
Absolutely. I honestly have no idea
Mhm.
why this hasn't come to fruition sooner. I really don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just glad that we're here to help fill that need.
yeah,
So,
Okay, you're starting a voice center. I'm sure that everything just went perfectly smoothly. There were no challenges, problems, snags along the way. So
no.
can you talk to us a little bit about the obstacles you faced and how you're maneuvering through them?
Yeah, there are a lot of obstacles. I mean, when you're the first in an area, there's a lot of education that has to happen. There's education to our staff, there's education to our call center employees. But honestly, the most challenging thing is dealing with my own personality. I I am that person who like puts the cart before the horse. I am that person who sees the potential of what can be in 10 years and I want it immediately. And know thyself, right? Like when you know this about yourself, you keep things in check. So I started this position with all of this wild energy. And I was like posting all the time. And I'm like, look at, building an institute, hashtag building a voice institute, week 1 and all these things. And because I was excited about everything that was going to come. And, I don't want to give anyone the impression that I have lost that energy or that it's stalled in any way, because that's not true. It has just become quieter and more focused and very deliberate. And we're trying to understand where we fit within our department of otolaryngology, where we fit in the broader scheme of the hospital and the hospital system,
Yeah.
who the stakeholders are and where the priorities are. And I mean, the most important thing is looking at who is coming to us, who has the need, who are our patients, and what do they need. So I've certainly seen like a decrease in the number of performers that I treat. At the Parker Institute, it was kind of 70% of my caseload was performers of all levels from student to professional. And now that's really dropped to maybe more of 20%. I think the challenge is really looking at who we are in the broader scope of the community and the hospital. And that takes some legwork. It takes some analysis and review of our demographics, review of who's coming back, and figuring out how to accommodate everyone and make it work. So it has been, an incredible year of growth, and it continues to grow, especially, now that we have the thought of adding a new person to the team. But it's challenging because you want to see that 10-year plan come to fruition right away, and you have to just kind of slow down and be calm about it. And that's just not my nature.
Are you getting a lot of teachers?
I do get a lot of teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, last year for World Voice Day, Dr. Garber and I did a webinar for school teachers in the, what was it? It was I believe it was the Northern
BOCES.
Westchester. Yeah, the Northern Westchester BOCES
I remember
program.
seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, they helped us do a really nice webinar that's still available on the BOCES website. And it was just kind of saying, hey, teachers, like we love you and we appreciate everything you do for our kids, especially over these past 4 years of madness and chaos during the pandemic. And, we're here for you if you need our help. And teachers really do encounter voice injury more than all of the other professions.
Mhm.
So we see a lot of teachers. We see just a big mix of all sorts of individuals. And it's very exciting to kind of learn who has a need
Right.
and how we can help.
Right. I think a lot of people know singers and actors as professional voice users, and they might not necessarily know teachers as so, but teachers are one of the biggest populations, and preachers, clergy, right?
Preachers, lawyers, salespeople, telecommunications professionals,
Athletic instructors. Yeah.
athletic instructors. I've done some research on the group fitness instructor, that's for
Mhm.
sure. And and so anyone who uses their voice in a highly demanding way for their profession faces some occupational risk factors. We call them voice ergonomic risk factors. And the reality is, you may have a vocally demanding job, but not training on how to use your voice or maintain your voice efficiently for that job.
Yeah.
So, so we come in on the rehabilitative side of things, but where I would like to see us have more focus is on the prevention and education side of things. That's another place where I think we're very important and needed.
Before we touch in on your research, I think I read an article recently that was talking about shifting in prevalence of voice disorders because of remote work.
Yes.
And now because so many people are Zooming, now we have a new category of professional voice demand,
Yes.
and it's creating changes in the shifting of prevalence for voice disorders. I think that's so interesting how culture can kind of shift things like that.
Oh, absolutely. It's like how we see, new words added to the dictionary.
Yeah.
It's an evolving thing. And I mean, there was even, I think it was a study out of the University of Miami, I want to say, by, I think, Jenny Lee Diaz, published this a while ago about voice specialized speech language pathologists who were dealing with voice problems related to shifting to telehealth platforms for the delivery of voice therapy. Yeah. And, this is what we do.
Right.
This is what we do for a living.
Right.
And we were facing the same problems, myself included.
Yep.
Sure.
So for our final segment, we call this the featured agentic practice. And we usually like to talk about having our guest, in this case you, just sharing with us what you think is a great practice that facilitates agency for speakers or freedom for voices. But in this segment, we also want to highlight some of your research. So as we talk about your recent research, you've been so prolific within the last year. I don't know, you're so admirable. I don't know how you do so much writing, and you're a mom, and starting a new voice institute. You're pretty impressive with all that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yes, talk with us about some of your new research, and as you do that, think about what agentic practice you want to leave with us.
Yes, I published a lot.
Yes.
And there's a lot in the works right now. And I think one of the studies that was published recently that I got to speak about at the Voice Foundation annual symposium last year in Philadelphia was a very kind of simple survey study. And it was an anonymous survey study, just to performers who had a history of voice injury. So if they, identified themselves as, I am a performer and I have had a history of voice injury, they were welcome to complete this survey. And we just asked this broad group of questions. Amanda Flynn, a wonderful voice teacher, and I kind of came up with this together. We were just like, we just want to know more. And we asked all sorts of questions about, what was your injury? What were your pathways to care? Who did you see? What kind of help did you have? Did it help you? Are you still performing? And so for that first portion of the study, because really we got so much information that it broke down nicely into two different studies. It was kind of like we can either dilute the information and kind of cram it into one study, or break it apart and talk about it more fully. So we decided to break it apart. So the first portion is available at the Journal of Voice. And if you go to my website, actually, I have it posted there where you can access a PDF. And it's really talking about how performers return to performance. And almost every single person who completed that survey who had a voice injury was able to return to performing. And kind of the game-changing elements were early access to care. So, recognizing some red flags and going and seeking help very early on. And something that was a very important finding in that study was really highlighting the importance of the voice teacher in that process. I mean, I'm a big fan of voice teachers. Some of my best friends are voice teachers. I like voice teachers. And I want voice teachers to know that how important that relationship is with their students. I have been fortunate to have so many amazing voice teachers in my life. And, one in particular, Dr. Robert Lowen, Bob, from Toronto. He remains the most influential voice teacher I've ever worked with. He has been a mentor, an advisor. We touch base, not regularly enough. We're always like, why don't we talk more often? And I mean, it remains this strong relationship, even 25 years after I graduated. I can't believe it's been that long. What that study highlighted for us was that voice teachers are kind of the first source of education and support. And the voice teacher has this direct role in helping their student recognize the red flags that may signal a voice injury and help guide them towards early evaluation and treatment. And, what we found, one of the points of that study we found was that the individuals who had a relationship with a voice teacher were more likely to find their treatment successful. And, that may be due to reinforcement from the voice teacher or the voice teacher SLP collaboration. But that was kind of a huge finding. And, the second part of this study is looking more closely at who actually has access to a voice care center. So that's kind of directly relevant to what we're doing here in Westchester, although certainly, anyone traveling to New York City has access to, can walk a block and get to a voice center. But looking at like who has access and who wasn't able to get the kind of care that they needed and what were the limiting factors. And I'll be talking about that study at the next Voice Foundation Symposium. And that one really, what we're finding so far, we're still working on the paper, but we're finding that the biggest barriers have to do with finance and insurance limitations, and also with travel restrictions. It's too far to get to a voice center, or scheduling problems, things like that, or loss of work in order to attend voice therapy, things like that. So we want to look much more closely at how can we increase performers' access to care. So that's one big area of study we've been working on. Another big area of study, this is actually kind of like a follow-up to some of the first papers I ever published at the Parker Institute. And that was actually before we became the Parker Institute. Dr. Salika and I wrote 2 different papers on one particular lesion type that some people call a vocal fold pseudocyst. We can call it many, many names, and there will never be agreement in the field of voice on what to call the things, but fortunately, there's generally pretty good agreement on what to do about them.
Okay.
And in those studies, we found some really interesting things, like that, 2/3 of the individuals who had a vocal fold pseudocyst were able to return to their normal vocal function without limitation after going through a course of voice therapy. So that's pretty good. And 1/3 of those individuals felt that they needed to have surgery to remove the lesion. And the thing that was the game changer wasn't that they couldn't produce a good voice. It was that they couldn't produce a good voice reliably every time.
Gotcha.
It was that inconsistency.
Consistency. Yeah.
And if you're on a Broadway stage 8 times a week, you have to be able to know that, what you put out there is going to be pretty consistent with very little variation night after night after night. I'm not a musical theater performer. I'm a classical singer. So I never had that kind of demand on me, but that lack of reliability is the big issue. So what we're doing now is this is actually the final IRB approved study I had approved before I left the Parker Institute. This is a study on the long-term outcomes of these lesions. We want to look and see how these evolve over time, because so many of the studies out there, especially on phonotraumatic lesions, are looking at, a very limited time period, maybe a few months or a year or 2 years. We want to look at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Can we get 20 years? Like, how can we see how these can evolve?
Mm-hmm.
So again, for anyone who's listening out there, if you ever were diagnosed with a phonotraumatic lesion at the Sean Parker Institute for the Voice, you might be getting a phone call inviting you for a free video stroboscopic exam and asking you to complete a little survey so we can get an idea of how they evolve anatomically and how that impacts one's ability to function and do all the things you want to do with your voice.
See, the long-term study aspect, I mean, I think that's something that's missing in a lot of our research, and it makes sense because of the logistics of making something like that happen. Yes. But I think this is so key to really understanding the sustainability factors and giving us a more complete picture of what's happening.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited to hear about this. I will be following.
Thank you. I hope I'm able to do something quickly. And anytime you dive into any type of clinical research, it's always like, what's going to pan out here? Because sometimes your finding is nothing, a finding of absolutely nothing, which is a little discouraging, but it's also a finding.
Yes.
Right? Yes. It is something.
It's still data.
It's
data.
Still data.
For sure.
Yes, it's still data. You want your research to change the world, but in the world of academia, you recognize that not everything's going to change the world, and that is okay, because you're answering the questions that need to be answered. Some of our other, and I'm going on and on, but I'm clearly very passionate.
I was going to say, you seem so excited, like you enjoy it. Not everyone enjoys research.
I mean, I'm not going to pretend I enjoy writing the papers.
Yes, academic writing is brutal. It's
brutal. It is brutal. But, when you're passionate about it, where these questions come from are really looking at, well, what do we keep hearing? A lot of it, I talk a lot about performers, and certainly not all the work I do is about performers, but that is a big portion of what I do. We hear all these vocal myths. And so, one of the other studies we launched into a few years ago was just looking at this myth of, singing on steroids, on oral steroids, is going to cause you permanent, irreparable voice damage. And I mean, I'd heard that before too. I'd heard that in my career, and I never would have ever considered singing on steroids. I was terrified at the thought of it. But we'd see these publications by very reputable people, but there wasn't data. There were no citations. And we were like, that's not what we see when we're seeing our own patients in our clinics. So did anyone study it? And we're like, no one studied it. Why don't we study it? And let's answer an important question. And so we kind of, just in routine clinical practice, if someone came to us with vocal fold edema or swelling from, maybe allergies or overuse or something of that nature, or just illness, if oral steroids were an appropriate option, we would offer that, or voice rest, or any other appropriate option. And if they chose the steroid treatment, we offered them enrollment in our study. And we said, hey, we'd like you to kind of fill out some surveys and take some measures on your voice. We're going to kind of look at the acoustics of your voice and the aerodynamics of how your voice is functioning. And we're going to ask you to come back after your treatment and see how things turned out. And we published, again, we had so much data, it broke down neatly into 2 different papers, one about the video stroboscopic outcomes after treatment, and one about their function after treatment. And we were finding people were ending up better than how they started. There were no long-term scary injuries that came out of it. And across the board, their vocal function was, greatly improved. But you always have to put out that caveat there and say, that doesn't mean like just, as a blanket recommendation, put everybody on steroids.
Because then you're going to have people like, you don't want the irresponsibility of, I'm going to just prescribe them without actually looking at the folds and see what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes what can happen is the steroids become a crutch because you're masking an underlying problem that could be treated in a better way. And that might be voice therapy. I mean, sometimes that's surgery or other types of treatments. So you don't want to keep masking a problem because then it can get worse. Then you are looking at bigger issues to deal with down the road. So you always have to put that out there and say, don't take this to mean everybody gets steroids now, but let's do away with this myth that if you sing on steroids, you're going to end your career.
Mm-hmm.
So Westchester Medical Center is a teaching college, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So are you going to continue publishing there?
I am.
Sure. Okay.
I hope so. Yes. As an assistant professor with New York Medical College, there is an expectation to continue publishing. And I really do. I really like doing that work. I've dabbled for years with the notion of, do I do a PhD? But at the end of the day,
you're already doing all of it.
I mean, I'm doing that work, but clinical care is my number one. And so I like the interaction with the patients. I like working with the people. I like being in the trenches. So I want that to inform the research that I'm fortunate enough to do. So, so with that, Dr. Garber and I were kind of looking at, okay, here's a year. We're in a year. Who are the people we see? What are some interesting avenues that we want to explore? Because we, for better or for worse, we do not have a large body of patients to look back on. We have a year.
Right. Not yet.
Not yet. So that offers up this wonderful thing that's lacking in the field of voice across the board, which is, long-term prospective study.
Right.
Let's look at, future. Let's, instead of looking back,
right.
Let's look towards prospective data. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and we're chatting a lot about what we can do.
Nice.
Well, I love the idea too of understanding to a greater degree the voice as it moves through human development, the whole process. So that's very salient.
Yes. It's, one of the joys about being a dynamic instrument, right? We are dynamic as humans and always evolving, and the voice is a component of that.
Yeah, one of our former guests called Jeremy called the voice a moving target throughout all of life.
I miss Jeremy being in New York. Oh, I wish he was still here, because he has such pearls to share, and he said such great things on your podcast. He really did.
Oh my goodness, we love him.
So now it's time for your pearls. So what are you going to leave us with? What do you think is your agentic practice?
So I think that my agentic practice is actually something that I care about deeply as a clinician, but I also care about deeply as a partner to my laryngologist, Dr. Garber. I'll present it that way kind of first. Dr. Garber and I, in kind of figuring out our flow in our clinic, what I really enjoy is we walk in together as a team. We evaluate as a team. We're glancing at each other. We're playing off of each other because we both want to get important information that's relevant to the person that we really care about, who's in the chair in front of us. And then we leave together and we chat, and then we come back with a plan. But what goes on outside of the room in that little chat is debate sometimes. I mean, look, we're both well-trained people with a lot of experience. So more often than not, we're totally on the same page, and, we're like, boom, boom. Okay, let's go back. But other times we debate. And what's great is there's safety. There's a safe place there to be wrong. There's not a fear of saying the wrong thing. Because if you say the wrong thing, okay, let's talk it out. And that's important if you're building any kind of practice. Like, as we add a new team member and hopefully continue to expand, I want to maintain that feeling of a safe environment to take the risk of being wrong. Because in my clinical practice, I try to make an environment where my singers or any of my patients, let's go of this notion that there is a right voice and a wrong voice, that there is a good voice and there's a bad voice.
I'm sorry, the heavens just opened. Angels are singing right now.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that, because, going through a classical career as I did, and I share sometimes some of my own issues with performance anxiety, driven by really needing to be right and produce the right thing. I don't want to impose that on anyone in my office. So I want to free them of that restraint. We have so many voices within us, and every voice in us has its own place and its own role, and is a perfectly valid thing that you can use whenever you want. And I want to help any singer understand what works for them in different ways as a singer, as an artist, as a human being, so that they have control on their own to know what works for them and what's great for, the one-off performance versus the 8-show-a-week performance. But ultimately, what helps them feel like their authentic, unique, artistic selves. What helps them maintain their sense of artistic integrity. So when I'm working with my patient, so much of that energy is focused on, feeling free to crack or make an ugly sound, because we make great discoveries in those moments. There's so many great things that come out of that. And I'm spending my time teaching them how to become their own SLP. Like you had Diana Rose Becker from the Emory Voice Center on at one point, and she gave this great example, and I just went, yes, about, you can have your patient say 10 ahs in a row and they have no idea what they're doing. They're just going through the motions. But when you teach them why it's important and what to feel for and how to recognize what the target is, when you teach them how to look for a target and aim for that target, you're giving them the control. You're putting them back in the driver's seat. And, I always think about my old voice lessons. I truly used to walk into voice lessons sometimes and just go like, okay, fix my voice. And like, there was humor to it, but there was also a degree of sincerity. It makes
I told my old voice teacher, I said, I don't know what's going on. You're going to earn your money today.
Like, we do it to ourselves, don't we? We place ourselves in this
So
position.
disempowering. Yes.
Yes, where the voice teacher or the voice therapist or the doctor holds all the cards. And I want to teach you to not need me, because you are doing it on your own. And I will be as much of a resource as I can to help you get there. I will help to help you get there. And a lot of this comes down to, what we call metatherapy.
Yes.
There's some good stuff going on out there on metatherapy. I'm actually very excited. I'm a co-author. I was invited to be a co-author on a paper really helmed by Leah Halou and Sarah Martineau and Jackie Gartner-Schmidt on metatherapy, and really understanding, like, how do we define it? How does it apply to voice therapy? And how do we teach the how and the why and those subtle skills? And that goes not only to teaching our patients, but it also goes to teaching young clinicians and mentoring young clinicians, because those are things that come with time. When you graduate from a voice program, and many who were fortunate to do a clinical fellowship in voice, I was not one of those people. My clinical fellowship was in skilled nursing facilities. People are sometimes surprised to hear that information. But I didn't do a CFY in voice.
I mean, the voice CF is a relatively new development within the field.
It is, but it existed when I went to school. It did. But at that time,
many of them.
There weren't many.
Right.
And, at that time I was looking at other things. I was a second career SLP, and, my things in my personal life kind of took priority over leaving New York and doing a voice CFY. So I did the best that I could. And I observed anyone who would let me walk in the door to get some of that knowledge. But really, SLPs coming out of those training programs, we were learned really hierarchical approaches to voice therapy, and we learn to kind of blow the bubbles through the straw, and we learn to, start with syllables and go to words and go to phrases and things like that. But teaching the skills of like recognizing change, feeling differences kinesthetically, hearing differences orally, having that kind of self-control over the changes you make, and understanding how that doesn't change your personality or your vocal identity, but it's just giving you more tools in your toolkit to use. Those are things that come with experience. And so we're trying to figure out how to teach them at an early time. So who knows, maybe you'll see something like that at the Fall Voice Conference, SLP conference. I don't know.
I'm really excited about everything that I'm hearing about metatherapy. I think it fits in really, really well with a trauma-informed approach. Yes. And I really love that you shared safety as your agentic practice, because that is a key principle of a trauma-informed approach. And I think you're the first person that has mentioned the importance of safety.
And I love the fact that you highlighted freedom and empowerment, but you started with safety.
Yes.
And we're kind of believers that like one leads to the other.
Oh, yes.
That was great.
Yes. And she also talked about collaboration and mutuality. You just covering everything.
She's like, I'm about all the things.
I really care about those things. I mean, and it takes time to build that trust. Sometimes that trust is gained the first time you meet somebody, and sometimes it takes time and effort to build that trust. And sometimes that trust doesn't happen. And, if I feel like my patient would feel a greater sense of trust and would benefit from working with someone else, my ego will let go of that and say, hey, let's segue you to this person and see, and this is not me kicking you out of my office. I actually want you to stay here, but I want you to get the best that you can for yourself. So if it takes another set of ears and eyes and another personality to do it, then I'll help you get there. And then I'm doing my job as best as I can. But sometimes if someone is, cracks in my office because they have let go of the hyper function that comes with trying to create the perfect sound, I'm just like, it's like a moment of applause and gratitude for trusting me enough to make that crack happen, to allow that crack to happen.
One of the analogies I use with some of my singers is that, like if you watch the old Bambi movie, Bambi in that first scene is kind of wobbly, right? And does that mean that Bambi was doing anything wrong? That wobble that happens is exactly what needs to happen. And then he's frolicking in the next scenes, so some of those wobbles are the new things getting in the game, and those deserve to be celebrated.
They sure do.
I love that. That's great. Yeah.
Okay, my goodness, Christine, we could talk to you all night, literally. It's been so enjoyable, but I guess we should do a wrap up. So unless there's anything pressing anyone has to say, I'll go ahead and do the closing.
I'll just say it's just been an absolute pleasure to be here. So thank you for letting me talk. And anyone out there, you might find Geneva and I on the Empire Trail at some point, because that's how we actually met, on my bicycle, and she was hiking, and we ran into each other by complete chance and did not pull out our phones. And I all of a sudden hear Christine and went, what? And neither of us thought of taking a selfie to document it for social media purposes or anything, but
it was an authentic interaction.
It really was. So I'm thrilled that helped us find each other here today. So thank you both for having me.
Yes.
Fabulous.
So in this episode, we discuss building a new voice institute with Christine Estes, some of her latest research with singers, and the importance of trauma-informed principles such as safety, collaboration and mutuality, and empowerment, voice, and choice. We are so grateful to have had her. If you enjoyed today's content, please don't forget to subscribe to the Agentic Voice Podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to leave a review and let us know what you want to hear more of, what you like, what you don't like. Your engagement helps our podcast grow. Until next time, take care.